Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. In an incredible new video, the one and only Arnold Schwarzenegger made an impassioned plea to Putin saying, stop this war. In a very emotional video that was posted across social media recently, Arnold Schwarzenegger actually criticized Russian disinformation about the war on Ukraine. Folks, I'm actually hearing reports of many people in Russia basically saying, hey, this is a peacekeeping mission. In fact, when relatives in the Ukraine call Russians and tell them, hey, we are under attack, Russians are like, what are you talking about? It's a peacekeeping mission. Well, that's because the Russian people are completely brainwashed. And what Arnold Schwarzenegger said to President Putin is, you started this war. You are leading this war. You can stop this war. Now, this statement, by the way, was released on Arnold Schwarzenegger's Twitter feed where he wrote, I love the Russian people. That is why I have to tell you the truth. Please watch and share. Pretty mind-blowing set of statements, subtitled in Russian, directly addressing the people of Russia, where, by the way, Schwarzenegger has a very long following, not just because he's a celebrity, an actor, but also as a politician. He is considered a politician and an intellectual. By the way, he was a governor of California and he conducted a trade mission to Russia. Let's take a look at this segment with the one and only Arnold Schwarzenegger trying to combat Russian disinformation and directly speaking to the people of Russia. Let's roll the tape and watch.
Russian people have always inspired me. That is why I hope that you will let me tell you the truth about the war in Ukraine and what is happening there. No one likes to hear something critical of the government. I understand that. But as a longtime friend of the Russian people, I hope that you will hear what I have to say. And may I remind you that I speak with the same heartfelt concern as I spoke to the American people when there was an attempted insurrection on January 6th last year, when a wild crowd was storming the US Capitol, trying to overthrow our government. You see, there are moments like this that are so wrong, and then we have to speak up. And it's exactly the same with your government. I know that your government has told you that this is a war to denazify Ukraine. Denazify Ukraine? This is not true. Ukraine is a country with a Jewish president, I might add, whose father's 3 brothers were all murdered by the Nazis. You see, Ukraine did not start this war. Neither did nationalists or Nazis. Those in power in the Kremlin started this war. This is not the Russian people's war. No. As a matter of fact, let me tell you, what you should know is that 141 nations at the UN voted that Russia was the aggressor and called for it to remove its troops immediately. Only 4 countries in the entire world voted with Russia. That is a fact. See, the world has turned against Russia because of its actions in Ukraine. Whole city blocks have been flattened by Russian artillery and bombs, including a children's hospital and a maternity hospital. 3 million Ukrainian refugees, mainly women, children, and elderly, fled their country, and many more are trying to seek to get out. It is a humanitarian crisis.
Now, what's unique is that Arnold Schwarzenegger, at the time of this video post, was just among 22 people followed by the Russian President Putin. Pretty interesting. So think about this. The Russian President Putin, follows just 22 people. This, again, is the President of Russia, Putin, following just 22 people. And one of them, at the time that this was being recorded, was the one and only Arnold Schwarzenegger. In addition to Arnold Schwarzenegger, Elon Musk and former President Barack Obama are people that Russian President Vladimir Putin follows. In fact, at the time I'm recording this, Arnold is still being followed by Putin. But the important thing is, Schwarzenegger said this, I'm speaking to you today because there are things that are going on in the world that are being kept from you. Terrible things that you should know about. He's, by the way, talking directly to the Russian people. He says this, Ukraine did not start this war. Neither did nationalists or Nazis. Those in power in the Kremlin started this war. This is not the Russian people's war. Now, at the time I'm recording this video, this segment from Arnold Schwarzenegger has already been viewed over 2 million times on Twitter, and Arnold Schwarzenegger actually taped it on Twitter just a few days ago. Now, the former governor's social media accounts, that's Arnold Schwarzenegger's accounts, have nearly 61 million followers, and a lot of people are actually paying attention to what Schwarzenegger is saying. In fact, in a response to to a Twitter post. We actually had Rob Flaherty, who's the White House Director of Digital Strategy. He called the statement really, really remarkable. Very interesting comments actually. We're actually seeing the White House actually stepping up and responding. And in fact, Daniel Ketchel, who's the spokesman for Arnold Schwarzenegger, said that the statement was actually written by Schwarzenegger and his communications team and was fact-checked by people who know what's going on. In fact, Kitchell said this came from Arnold's heart, not the government. Now, let me know what you think. Let's take a look at another segment featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger where he talked about the disinformation in Ukraine and the war on Ukraine. Let's roll the tape and see what Arnold Schwarzenegger had to say. Let's watch.
Because of its brutality, Russia is now isolated from the society of nations. You're also not being told the truth about the consequences of this war on Russia itself. I regret to tell you that thousands of Russian soldiers that have been killed. They have been caught between Ukrainians fighting for their homeland and the Russian leadership fighting for conquest. Massive amounts of Russian equipment have been destroyed or abandoned. The destruction that Russian bombs are raining down upon innocent civilians has so outraged the world that the strongest global economic sanctions ever taken have been imposed on your country. Those who don't deserve it on both sides of the war will suffer. The Russian government has lied not only to the citizens, but to its soldiers. Some of the soldiers were told they were going to fight Nazis. Some were told that the Ukrainian people would greet them like heroes, and some were told that they were simply going on exercise. They didn't even know that they were going into war. And some were told that they were there to protect ethnic Russians in Ukraine. None of this is true. The fact is that Russian soldiers have faced fierce resistance from the Ukrainians who want to protect their families and their country. When I see babies being pulled out of ruins, I think that I'm watching a documentary about the horrors of the Second World War, not the news of the day. Now let me tell you, when my father arrived in Leningrad, he was all pumped up on the lies of his government. And when he left Leningrad, he was broken, physically and mentally. He lived the rest of his life in pain. Pain from a broken back, pain from the shrapnel that always reminded him of these terrible years, and pain from the guilt that he felt.
Now, Arnold Schwarzenegger also made comments about Ukraine on Telegram, which, by the way, many Russians can still access. Now, just so you know, the Russian people are unable to access many sources of information because there's essentially an information embargo in Russia where people are being prevented from accessing information. Schwarzenegger called the invasion an illegal war and a human catastrophe. And he told Russian soldiers that your lives, your limbs, your futures are being sacrificed for a senseless war being condemned by the entire world. Wow, I couldn't have said it any better myself. Let's roll the tape and see what the one and only Schwarzenegger had to say to the people of Russia. Let's watch.
To the Russian soldiers listening to this broadcast, you already know much of the truth that I've been speaking. You've seen it with your own eyes. I don't want you to be broken like my father. This is not the war to defend Russia that your grandfathers or your great-grandfathers fought. This is an illegal war. Your lives, your limbs, your futures are being sacrificed for a senseless war condemned by the entire world. Now, to those in power in the Kremlin, let me just ask you, why would you sacrifice those young men for your own ambitions? To the soldiers who are listening to this, remember that 11 million Russians have family connections to Ukraine. So every bullet you shoot a brother or a sister. Every bomb or every shell that falls is falling not on an enemy, but on a school, or a hospital, or a home. I know that the Russian people are not aware of such things are happening. So I urge the Russian people and the Russian soldiers in Ukraine to understand the propaganda and the disinformation that you are being told. I ask you to help me spread the truth. Let your fellow Russians know the human catastrophe that is happening in Ukraine. And to President Putin I say, you started this war. You are leading this war. you can stop this war. Now, let me close with a message to all of the Russians who have been protesting on the streets against the invasion of Ukraine. The world has seen your bravery. We know that you have suffered the consequences of your courage. You have been arrested, you have been jailed, and you have been beaten. You are my new heroes. You have the strength of Yuri Petrovich Vlasov. You have the true heart of Russia. My dear Russian friends, may God bless you all.
So let me know what you think about this. Do you agree or disagree with this very thoughtful set of comments, which really drive the point home? I mean, you heard the Terminator, the governor, for yourself, and all of his words had subtitles in Russian so that he could get through to the Russian people. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please click like, please click subscribe, please enable notifications. If you think this war should be stopped, please type out in the comment section, stop this war. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please type stop this war. We need to show solidarity for the people of Ukraine. And I think at the end of the day, we are all humans. We're not Russians. We're not Ukrainians. We're not Americans. We're not Canadians. We are all humans. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. Please click like, please click subscribe, please enable notifications. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.